You've courted and backed vulture and cuckoo funds, promoted build to rent, tolerated the bulk buying of homes from under the noses of first-time buyers. And yet you and Micheál Martin spin the line that you've turned the corner on housing. You have not. So far, your government has delivered less homes this year than last. That's not turning a corner, Taoiseach. That's called going backwards. Minister O'Brien spent months promising new housing targets, but Micheál Martin wasn't best pleased. After all, joint housing targets simply draw attention to your joint failure. So a sham fight ensued, petty politicking, and then the Taoiseach buckled. And now in the dying week of your government, you finally set your new housing targets. And lo and behold, they're too low again. They're 20% lower than what your own Housing Commission states is needed. And I think this demonstrates why people can't afford another government led by Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil. Because the housing crisis will continue and worsen. House prices, rents and homelessness will continue to increase, leaving more working people locked out of affordable housing. And with what choice? The box room of their parents' house, or getting fleeced in the rental sector if they can find somewhere, or being forced to emigrate. That is what you offer. But the good news is that people can put an end to your housing disaster in this election. Choose to back a real housing plan from Sinn Féin, the plan to make housing affordable, to bring home ownership back to the reach of working people, to get families off council waiting lists and into homes, to end long-term homelessness, to give hope back to a generation so badly failed by Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. Hope that they can have a home of their own and build a good life here in Ireland. Le rion Fine Gael agus Fianna Fáil a rís nach réiteog siad ceist na tithiachta. Tá sé thar ama don bhunarthú leatha amach I blan hin féin a curthach tithe in achfanna fáil agus a curthach deire leis an ngéircéim tithiachta. Taoiseach, workers and families cry out for affordable, secure homes. And yet you, again, stand over housing targets too low to meet housing need. Can you explain that failure again, please?
Thank you, Deputy MacDonald. Taoiseach.
Thanks so much, Ceann Comhairle. As I rise today in the Dáil, I'm very conscious that a giant of the press gallery has had their funeral today in David Davenport, and I know I joined with colleagues right across this House when I want to extend my sympathies to David's wife Dermot, to his 5 children, his wider friends and family, and I know we all think of David and his family at this very, very sad time, and we all remember him fondly in this House and his incredible contribution. Deputy MacDonald, thank you for raising what is an incredibly important issue, the issue of housing, because I agree on this. Housing is the biggest challenge that faces this generation. It must be the #1 priority for government. But we are making progress, and it's your failure to acknowledge that progress isn't borne out by the realities being experienced by people right across this country. Because there are now 500 individuals or couples buying their first home every week. You never seem to meet these people. I meet them regularly. People who are buying houses each and every week, getting their homes, moving out of the box room, moving in with their partner, moving into a place where they can start their career from. We've had housing commencement figures that are really quite extraordinary in terms of seeing construction now starting on over 49,000 homes so far this year. This is important progress, and it is something that should give cause for optimism. And of course, all of this is backed up by the largest housing budget ever in Budget 2025, where this coming year, we'll see a record €6 billion in capital investment in housing, up 20% on last year's allocation. In addition to that, unlike your plans, which would pull the rug from under first-time buyers, we are actually extending the first home scheme out to 2029, extending the Help to Buy scheme, a scheme that has helped 50,000 first-time buyers. You want to abolish it for some reason, and we're providing an extra €80 million for the first home scheme as well. We're increasing the renters' tax credit, both now and again into next year. And yes, today, we did agree housing targets that, roughly speaking, will see an ability to deliver, for every one home that was delivered during the lifetime of this government, an ability to deliver 2 over the course of the next 5 years. That is genuine progress. And of course, you're quite right. The people will have time very shortly to give their view and their verdict, not just on our housing plans, but also on yours. And I very much look forward to that as well, because people watching today should know that you want to abolish the Land Development Agency, an agency that's now capitalised to deliver 18,000 homes. 18,000 homes are going to be delivered by the LDA. What's your priority when you get into government? Spend God knows how long passing legislation to scrap it when it's building homes. I've been there with you, Minister O'Brien, in Shanganagh, in Shankill, with you, Minister Carol McNeill, where we've actually seen people moving into their new homes. The second thing I think they're going to ask you is, when are you going to tell the people of Ireland what issues the banks have raised with you about your housing plan? You told them on RTÉ this week, you said, yeah, they raised a couple of issues, but we think we can overcome them all. What are the issues? Please, when you get to your feet, let us know what are the issues. Did the banks raise 1 issue? Did they raise 5? Did they raise 3? What are the issues? Because people trying to get a mortgage want to know that. No, you see, it's about a change here. It's not going to be just about you asking me questions. We've questions about your housing plan as well. And the third thing is this: what do you say to the guard married to the nurse who will not be able to qualify for assistance under your plan? Because under our plan,
It is true, Owen.
Please, no.
Over 90,000.
Please, a little order.
Don't be shouting now. Under our plan, people can get up to 30,000 back through the Help to Buy. Under your plan, somebody on combined income of €95,000 will receive no support if a house price exceeds €450,000. Under our plan, people who try to buy a house worth €450,000 can get that €30,000 back. Under your plan, they can only get €4,500 back. So yes, there is going to be a choice on offer for the Irish people. And yes, you are offering change. It's just not change that people want.
So your very great problem, Taoiseach, is that nobody believes you?
Well, let's see. Let's see.
Oh, we'll see, all right.
We'll see.
Oh, we'll see, all right. And I look forward.
Humility is gone
I
already.
look forward to the debate that will ensue.
Me too.
When we place our costed, thoughtful, deliverable plan that is directed at delivering affordable homes for families, affordable rents, finally tackling the scourge of homelessness, a plan that is rooted in concern for citizens and communities and not kowtowing to the high and mighty vulture funds, cuckoo funds, the big developers and the corporate landlords. That is the Fine Gael way, Ceann Comhairle, and I look forward to the debate and challenging you on that.
Me too.
The fact is that your belated housing targets are 20% below what is required according to your own Housing Commission. These aren't Sinn Féin figures. These are your figures. And you fail yet again to recognise the scale of the crisis and the need that we face. I asked you to explain the fact that you have undershot again by 20%. You brought your memo to Cabinet. I have not as of yet seen how many social or affordable housings are contained in these figures. You might enlighten us on that. But the bigger issue is, how is it, after years of government and all of your hot air, that even as we exit this stall, even as you walk out the door for the final time, you still undersell, you still underplay, and you can't even get your targets right? For God's sake, you're hardly building the necessary number of homes when you can't even do the simple maths.
You're terribly confident about the outcome of the next section, walking out the door for the final time and all this sort of stuff, so it's good to see the arrogance is back. The reality of the situation is this. Today, this government took a decision that is a responsible decision, a decision to set housing targets for the next 5 years that can show people how, over the course of now out to 2030, you can deliver 303,000 homes, averaging at 50,500 over the course of that time period per year. That is going to make a real and meaningful difference to people right across this country. It's going to mean effectively a doubling of new housing supply over that time period, and that will enable more first-time buyers to buy their homes. It'll enable us to provide more social homes than ever before. And we're not coming at this from a standing start, Deputy. We're coming at this from the point where already we're seeing mortgage drawdowns up, already we're seeing the number of first-time buyers up, and we're seeing 500 new individual first-time buyers and couples buying their first home each and every week. That is progress. There's a lot more to do. The country has the resources to do it. We have the plan to do it, and we can credibly show people how we're going to do it. You're still refusing to answer the question about what issues the banks raise with you. When will you tell us what they are, and when will you answer those questions?
Thank you, Taoiseach. We go now to Deputy Ivana, please.
By all accounts, this will be the last time that you and I will speak during leaders' questions. And I do want to ensure constructive engagement and not engage in cheap political shots. I think that's important. And fittingly, I want to ask you about the issue which, above all else, has defined your government's term in office, the housing crisis, which affects every family and every community. It's being raised with us every time we knock on doors. I'm sure it's being raised with you too. We know that everyone should have a home, and this crisis is not new, but it has been compounded year on year by government inaction, cementing itself as the civil rights issue of this generation and affecting every generation. Taoiseach, you took up your role nearly 7 months ago now, but you've been a cabinet member for much longer than that, and your government has been in office for 4.5 years. By any objective standards, over that time, your housing plan has failed. We know that rents are up. We know that evictions are up, and we know that house prices are up. And tragically, the numbers of people in homelessness are still up and increasing. And the slowness of your government to take meaningful action on the housing crisis has directly impacted on people's ability to obtain a home and has deprived far too many people of a basic human right. I said it to Minister Darragh O'Brien before the recess. Over the past 4 years, you could have acted to protect renters from evictions by passing our Labour Renters' Rights Bill. You could have acted to keep children out of homelessness by passing our Homeless Families Bill. And crucially, you could months ago have increased your targets and sought to build more homes. And Taoiseach, the single biggest impact your government could have had is through the construction of more social and affordable housing, through transforming the Land Development Agency into a state construction company, as we advocated, and of course through the setting of higher targets, which could have made a real difference. For some time now, I think we've all been aware that your government's housing targets have been a work of fiction, set too low and in many cases not even met. Successive government ministers have conceded to me for over a year now that they were too low. And before we broke for recess, I asked the Minister for Housing if he would at last publish the revised higher figures before the general election. He didn't commit to doing so then. I do genuinely welcome that they are now being published, and I do welcome your announcement now that they are going to be at a much higher rate. But Taoiseach, the problem is that keeping the target so low until now has prevented industry from pivoting towards construction of homes rather than commercial construction. And the slowness in other areas too has contributed to delays in construction output. Slowness to amend the critical skills list. Your tenure as Minister for Higher Education, where we did not see proper action taken to incentivise people to take up apprenticeships or stay in them. No big strategy for getting more planners, no big recruitment drive, no urgency or ambition to tackle the housing crisis. And so ramping up delivery to the necessary targets you're now setting, that has been delayed by your delays, and we've seen no additional capital investment for housing in this budget. So Taoiseach, you must understand you've gone about this the wrong way. And do you accept now that your government has failed and is continuing to fail on housing?
No, I genuinely believe that this government can approach the end of its tenure, pointing to the fact that there are very many more homes of a whole variety of different tenures that are in Ireland now that weren't there before this government came to office. And by any objective measure, not only have we hit targets, we've actually exceeded targets as well. And I do appreciate the constructive way in which you engage on this important matter, but I do find it odd when people say the targets were set too low. I do remember not that long ago in this House, going back only a couple of years ago, there would have been people saying we wouldn't hit those targets and people doubting those targets would ever be realised. Then you hit the target, then you exceed the target, and then all of a sudden the target was too low. The target was a fair reflection of what could be delivered when we were having to rebuild a construction sector almost from scratch. And as a result, we have now absolutely exceeded the targets. You have been a voice in this House calling for revised targets to be published. We have now done that today, and I think that anchors the discussion for the weeks ahead, because this government believes we can deliver over 300,000 homes between now and 2030. We have outlined a breakdown of how many we believe can be delivered in each of the years. It will absolutely be up to political parties in their manifestos and in the time ahead in government formation to outline what they believe the mix of that should be in terms of social homes, affordable homes, private to buy homes. And again, I know people will have constructive ideas in relation to that. In relation to the Land Development Agency, I'd argue in many ways we've gotten a lot of the way to what you'd be suggesting, because the Land Development Agency now is partnering with many councils across the country, and it's partnering in terms of delivering homes on public land. So I often hear in this House, deliver public homes on public land. That's now actively happening in many locations right across the country. I do have to say, in relation to apprenticeships, we've taken a lot of actions to try to incentivise apprenticeships, including providing financial assistance to anybody who takes on a new apprentice, accepting and understanding that the cost, particularly to a smaller business or a smaller construction company, the cost of actually training in an apprentice can be real. And as a result, we have provided significant financial grants to businesses that do take on apprentices. We've also resourced other sectors. Minister O'Brien has led on things like on board Planola staffing levels. I think they're up around 50%, hundreds of more planners in place right across our local authority system as well. But today we do try to move forward by actually anchoring the debate and the discussion about where we can get Ireland to over the course of the lifetime of the next government. And that is a scenario where, for roughly speaking, every one new home built during the lifetime of this government, 2 homes could be built in the lifetime of the next government. Of course, all of that is contingent on a government that will engage truthfully with people on this issue, a government that actually has the credibility to show how they can do that as well, and of course an economy that can continue to actually fund the delivery and the building of those houses too.
The very late publication of revised targets, but I regret the fact that they're being published so late. It's just not good policy making to set targets that are too low for too long, and then at the 11th hour and a month before many offices shut for Christmas to bring in new targets, especially when they're not being funded adequately. So I do have serious concerns about the lateness of the setting of the new targets. And indeed, Taoiseach, I regularly speak with those in the construction industry who want to be a part of a building programme that lifts people out of homelessness, that ensures a more ambitious and urgent delivery of homes. But they are fundamentally stymied in achieving that ambition because government has simply failed to support them adequately until now. And now, the week that the Dáil apparently is to be dissolved, we see those targets finally being raised. Now, for over a year now, we in the Labour Party have consistently been saying that targets need to be in the vicinity of 50,000 new builds per year in order to meet the scale of demand that's out there. That's what we're hearing every day in our communities. I know you're hearing it too, and it's simply too late now to be setting those revised targets with any prospect of making real change, clearly in the lifetime of this government. But it is important to acknowledge that, Taoiseach, I think, at this point, for those who are in homelessness and those who are seeking to achieve their own home. I've already responded on that, and I'm not going to take that again. And I'm not taking it anymore, Ceann Comhairle.
What's he saying? Ignoramus. Absolute ignoramus. Ignoramus. I hope that's some parliamentary language.
I think I better answer. I better respond. No, that's okay. No, look. Look, the deputies made a number of important points. Look, I would say in relation to the targets, being very honest, there probably isn't much surprise in terms of the fact that the targets are rising, and indeed you've suggested figures, and other opposition parties and government parties have all suggested of where housing needs to get to, and you've heard figures are getting to kind of 50, 60. We'll have our detailed debate soon, but 50 to 60,000 homes are figures that I've heard in this House and heard from people right across the building sector as well. But being very honest, Deputy, nearly the more important part, or at least as important a part, was getting the National Planning Framework forward as well, because the National Planning Framework in its current guise, let's call it the old version, wouldn't obviously have an ability to deliver that number of homes in terms of land and zone land across our country. So I think what we've done today is not just set the figures for the next number of years, which I hope will anchor the discussion, and I appreciate your welcome, but also actually, I suppose, put out the national planning framework in a draft form so that the system can prepare for whoever the Irish people decide to be in government in terms of being ready for that increase in scale as well. And we should say, Ceann Comhairle, around 40 to 50% of homes being built in this country are being built somewhat subvented by the taxpayer. I mean, that is an incredible level of intervention, almost unparalleled across the European Union.
Throughout the lifetime of this government, I've emphasised the need to maintain and expand the services that exist for older people within our communities. The Templemore Community Care Project is a group that oversees the provision of a range of vital services, including day care for older people, a community preschool, community social work, family support services, travel support services, and an invaluable Meals on Wheels service. The work of this group is the heartbeat of a very wide-ranging community. They provide a lifeline for an ever-growing number of people in Templemore and neighbouring parishes. Services are currently delivered from a premises in the town. Daycare attendees range between 75 and 90 years of age. Restrictions on space prevents the extension of services to those aged 65 to 75. One community room acts as both sitting room and dining room, and there is no outdoor recreational areas. Access to physiotherapy and other ancillary services is by chairlift. Underlining this issue of space is the fact that some clients can only be catered for one day a week with an ever-growing waiting list for the places. Existing facilities just about allow for the cooking of meals for the day care attendees and Meals on Wheels clients. Capacity to meet the ever-growing demand does not exist in the current location. However, Taoiseach, there is a solution to this situation. In the heart of Templemore is a now vacant convent building occupied by the Sisters of Mercy since 1873. It contains large spaces and stands on 2.5 acres of beautiful grounds. This building, which is in a remarkably good condition, provides a perfect setting for the provision of services in the community. The building has the capacity to accommodate and greatly expand key services to support the elderly, children, families and marginalised groups. This former convent, which has overseen the education of a huge percentage of the local population, now holds the key to the present and future care of generations to come. The local committee has secured agreement on the purchase of this cherished building. The committee will make the maximum contribution possible towards its purchase. This will be enhanced by the generosity of local people who are conscious of the need for the ongoing and increased provision of invaluable services. The cost of securing this building cannot be undertaken without financial assistance from the state. The HSE has a duty of care to meet the needs of those served by Templemore Community Services. Their contribution to its purchase is crucial to its future. Taoiseach, I am asking you and your officials to engage with the HSE and other state agencies to secure their financial assistance to complete the purchase and alteration of this building. Templemore Social Services are essentially a voluntary group. On a daily basis, they deliver vital support for older people. The many people from Templemore and surrounding parishes benefit enormously. Those people greatly appreciate the quality of care and attention. Government, through its agencies, Taoiseach, must give practical and financial support to a very deserving project.
Thanks very much, Ceann Comhairle. I want to thank Deputy Lowry for raising this issue. I may begin by expressing my appreciation, I'm sure that of everybody in this House, for everybody who has worked or is working or volunteering with Templemore Community Services and indeed with our day centres right across Ireland. Ceann Comhairle, we're lucky to live in a country where around 300 day centres are provided and around 300 Meals on Wheels locations right across the country, and I'm conscious that so many of those organisations, while some run directly by the HSE, so many of them are grant aided by the HSE, but overwhelmingly run and supported by volunteers with that real Irish sense of meitheal. And I want to take the opportunity of Deputy Lowry's question to really acknowledge and thank people working in Templemore Community Services and all those like that right across Ireland as well. I can very much hear in your contribution the esteem in which this organisation is held and how clearly vital the services that it provides are to the local community. And I think you're right, it's not unfair to say that when organisations provide such vital services, they should expect the state to step up and to partner with them to enable that delivery. It's not good enough to just thank people. We've got to try and support them as well. And I do know, and I've spoken to the Minister for Health in relation to this, I know that Templemore Community Services has expressed an interest in the Old Convent of Mercy. And my understanding is that the HSE has now issued a letter of support to Templemore Community Services in relation to its requirement for additional space to develop its services. And they have committed to me that they will engage directly with Templemore Community Services. So the need for additional space is acknowledged by the HSE, is supported by the HSE as well, and we very much look forward as a government to doing all that we can to support Templemore Community Services in its efforts in relation to this. I should say I know that this is a service that provides daycare services 5 days a week with a maximum daily capacity of around 20 people per day attending this site, and as you're pointing out, they need to and want to do more, and they need more space to do that. And the core annual funding for this site is around €263,303, which is provided for the provision of those day services and the meal collection services. But we will work with you, and we will work with the Templemore Community Services to see if more progress can be made in advancing their interest in this convent site.
Taoiseach, thank you for your consideration of this proposal. Tomorrow morning, the HSE meet with the local committee, the Action Committee. So it's important that when they put forward a proposal to the Department of Health, that it's received favourably and that some funding is immediately provided. And I have to say that I'm very familiar with the local group that work behind the scenes. They're a very dedicated, committed and hard-working group. I have met them on several occasions. Their determination to continue to see their work benefit the community is actually inspiring when you hear them. I have given the committee much time and advice, and personally I'm convinced of the merits of this project and that we have to ensure that they get some capital funding to make sure that it comes to fruition. So I'm asking you, Taoiseach, before when the HSE provide a report to the department, that it's received and some financial support is granted to allow it to proceed.
Time is getting short around here, but that's very quick and very efficient. I only stood up a minute ago and you said they're having the meeting tomorrow, so that worked out well. But look, this is a very important issue, and I'm pleased to hear from you that meeting will take place tomorrow between the HSE and Templemore Community Services. Like I say, the government fully recognises and agrees with you and with Templemore Community Services that there is a need for additional space. Obviously, we have to provide the opportunity and space for proper engagement between the HSE and the community services. But I know Minister Donnelly, Minister Butler and the government are committed to doing what we can to support this organisation. And I hope we've shown good faith in relation to that over the last number of years in terms of what we've invested in older people's services. In fact, the budget for 2025 will bring investment in older people's services next year close to €3 billion, and it's an increase of €349 million on the figure for this year. And actually, we've increased the budget for older people's services by about 50% in the lifetime of this government, and I hope that shows the value that we attach to caring for older people in our community, and we'll continue to keep a close eye on this.
On behalf of the Rural Independent Group, Deputy Danny Healy.
First of all, I want to welcome almost 30 retired nurses who gave their lives working in hospitals and for the care of people who were sick. I welcome them up here today to Dolly and commend them for the service they gave. However, Taoiseach, I want you to remind you, these are the very people who came back in 2022 and 21 to help out during the COVID period. You're taking money, demanding money out of their pensions now. These are the very people that you're abating their pensions. 2,700, 5,000, 25,000 for another man that had a high dependency job. And these are the very people that you're trying to tax. You, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and the Greens, that's what you're doing to these people up here, grand people. Now, Taoiseach, I also want to ask you about the embargo in Kerry, where there's up to 120 posts yet to be filled over many, many months. And you're saying there's no embargo. Well, there is an embargo. Since last November, a girl came back from Australia somewhere last March, and he won't give her job back. That's the gospel truth. There's beds closed in all our hospitals, the district, the University Hospital Kerry, they're closed and empty because there's no one to man them. Respite care for the elderly, for people with physical and intellectual disabilities need to be greatly enhanced as it is almost existent. The means test for carers allowance needs to be abolished now. Waiting times for procedures and surgeries need to be reduced. Waiting for assessments for children with autism, ADHD and mental health issues has to be dealt with urgently, as early intervention is paramount for these children. In fact, I received yesterday a response from Minister Donnelly, a PQ that I sent to him, and the answer he gave us is that the current waiting time is 30 months. God Almighty, Taoiseach, is that what you're presiding again over? Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and the Greens, and you are joined together. You told people in Kerry when we gave a speedy trip around there that you had a way out of it, that you would appoint another minister instead of Minister Donnelly when the election would be over. Don't laugh at all. I could bring him here and through the man that you told. No bother in the world. Ambulance cover needs to be increased, not reduced. He closed down the only eye clinic that we had in Kerry, in Tralee, over 5 or 6 months ago, and at the same time he reduced the reimbursement that I was getting for taking people to Belfast to save their eyes. This is what he's been at, Taoiseach, and this is what he presiding over, and no matter how much he'll try to disentangle from each other. Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and the Greens, he had the one crowd, he might as well name himself, get a new party, because that's what he are. He had the one crowd, and he took on the Greens for to get ministerial and Taoiseach and tarnish the post for yourselves.
Right, thank you.
That's what he done.
Well, they liked that, Deputy. Well, look, thanks very much. I was in Kerry and there was nothing speedy about it, actually. I was there for most of the day. So, sorry, now, hang on a second. You have to give me a little bit of a chance. I was there, and indeed, when I was driving by on the road, I saw this very large, I don't know what it was, but like a porta cabin type thing with your face emblazoned right across it, asking people to vote. So you're clearly ready for battle. No, it wasn't a lorry I saw. So you're clearly ready for battle. You're clearly ready for battle. And look.
And it didn't cost 326,000. And you put more bicycles in it than the bicycle shed.
Can I firstly welcome the retired nurses, hello there, from University Hospital Kerry, from Kerry here today, and thank them for their service in relation to the health service. And I'll certainly have a word with them in a moment about some of the issues that you've raised there, because I'm not across the detail of that and it doesn't tally with my information, but I'll have a word with them in a moment. Secondly, look, I accept that when it comes to the health service, of course the health service has to live within an allocation, and the allocation is larger than it has ever been. Today it's a hell of a lot larger than when I was Minister for Health. Now it's gone from about 16 billion to about 25 billion. But the truth does also matter, because we do have funding in place now to hire thousands more people to work in the health service under the leadership of Minister Donnelly. And as of September 2024, there were 27,744 more staff working in the health service than there were when this government of Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and the Greens came to office. And that is a 23% increase. So there's 9,185 more nurses and midwives. There's 4,160 more health and social care professionals, and there's 3,479 more doctors and dentists. And I'll get through the figures, but I've no doubt in Kerry Hospital that means more staff, more nurses, more doctors than there were only a few years ago. And I accept we need to continue to grow those numbers to support our frontline health services. And that's why we have funding here in Corla for around 7,000 more people between the end of this year and next year as well. You mentioned the issue of the carers, and I'm glad you did, because the means test is mean, and we do need to overhaul it and reform it. And that's why my colleague Minister Humphreys has a piece of work that will be concluded by the end of the year in relation to the whole means testing of our carers. And we'll all have a chance, including you and everybody else in this House, to put forward the proposals to carers in the days ahead as to what we would do to support them over the next number of years. And I'm proud of a number of the measures that we have taken under Minister Humphreys' leadership in terms of providing additional payments to our carers before Christmas, as well as the double child benefit payment being provided today, the double pension payment being provided last week, the fuel allowance lump sum payment that will be provided this week, and many more measures that I know make a real difference to people in County Kerry. And I met them in Kerry, I met them in Listowel, I met them in Tralee, I met them in Killarney, and I met them with a very good man man called Billy O'Shea. In relation to assessments of needs, you need to make more progress here, and you're right in relation to that. And that's why when the Labour Party brought forward a proposal based on Cara Darmody, the young girl from Tipperary's advocacy, around utilising capacity in the private sector while building up capacity in the public sector, that's what we've done, and that has seen now well more than 1,000 additional children with special needs get access to assessments of need this year, and I accept that's a model we need to continue.
Taoiseach, thanks for the reply, but we're living in promises and have been living in promises for a very long time. And when you say that you and this one and that one are going to do something, it will be after the election. We'll have to wait to see who's there. But I have to say to you, when are they going to react? When are they going to lift the embargo? Because the facts are, day after day, young boys and girls that are trained to be nurses and trained to be carers and trained to be GPs, they're leaving the country because there has been an embargo for 12 months now since last November. You can't deny it. It has happened. It is happening. So many posts are unfilled and there's so many beds empty because you can't have the beds if you don't have staff to fill them. And that's what's happening. And you see, even as we're speaking here today, they're flying out. And there's beds empty that we're calling for. Even an ICU bed. There was none to be got yesterday in the most of the country, only up here in Dublin. You had Minister Donnelly saying that he had reduced the waiting time for cataracts to be done from 3 years to 3 months in Dublin. What have he done in Kerry? He closed down the eye unit and he cancelled the insurance.
Okay,
it was utterly criminal so that they couldn't act.
Please.
That's the God's gospel truth.
Okay, thank you. Taoiseach.
Well, thanks very much, Deputy. So look, you are right, there was a period of time during the year where we did have to put restrictions in terms of hiring new posts in the health service because they'd hired many, many more thousands of people than actually had been budgeted for. And we worked our way through that. And as I say, there are lots and lots and lots more people working in the health service now, in the public health service, including in Kerry. In fact, there's around 410 additional staff in Kerry Hospital today, and I think an increase of around 177 nurses during the lifetime of this government. And when it comes to reducing our wait times, we are making progress. We're one of the few countries in Europe that are actually seeing waiting times fall over the last 2 years, and that fall has happened in Kerry too. Let me assure you, the waiting time, well, let me assure you, Deputy, the waiting time for cataract procedures in Kerry has fallen this year compared to last year, and it will continue to fall. No, you know why it is? You know why it is? You know what? Well, maybe.
Nothing for us. What did he do for them? He closed down the unit in 3. That's what he done.
It's where you're paying for the bus. The reality of the situation is we are reducing wait times. We have opened up more ophthalmology capacity in the southwest. You've pointed out to additional capacity that exists in this jurisdiction that doesn't require you to bring anyone out of the jurisdiction, and we will continue to do more and drive down waiting times further.
Leaders' questions. We move now to